Once upon a time, the web was heavily chained by its own complexity. Pages loaded like they carried the world as weight. Developers built castles on sand, and creativity often drowned in code. But then, a new rhythm rose, a quiet revolution, not born from noise, but from clarity. This is the start of Jamstack, not just a framework, but a philosophy where the web breathes free again. Imagine standing in front of a vast city made of code, streets built from scripts, towers built from templates, and bridges held together by databases that hum quietly in the dark. Once, this city was new, alive, electric. Every click led to discovery. Every line of HTML felt like a spark of creation. But as the web grew older, that city became crowded. Every innovation added another layer, another dependency, another weight pressing down on the developers who tried to build within it. There was a time when the web was simple. You did write a few files on HTML, CSS, a touch of JavaScript, and the page was yours. It lived, breathed, and loaded instantly. You own it completely. But over time, simplicity gave way to complexity. Servers multiplied, databases sprawled, frameworks appeared like new religions, each promising salvation but demanding loyalty. Developers no longer built as they assembled. Every set became a careful arrangement of fragile systems whispering to one another. Backend servers waiting for requests, databases fetching data, templates rendering pages on the fly. A single missing dependency could bring the whole thing down. Users didn't see this struggle. They just saw slow loading pages and broken links. But behind the screen, developers felt it. The frustration of endless deployment pipelines, the weight of server maintenance, the constant fear of downtime. The web had grown powerful, yes, but bloated. Each innovation stacked on top of another like layers of sediment, until even simple ideas required complex infrastructure. To publish a blog post, you might need a backend service, a database, a framework, an API connection, and a prayer. Creativity suffered. The freedom that once defined the web, the feeling that anyone could build anything, began to fade. Teams spent more time fixing than creating. Designers waited for builds. Developers waited for servers. Marketers waited for updates. And the audience waited for pages to load. It wasn't just slow, it was heavy. The weight wasn't only technical, it was emotional. When you spend your time maintaining systems instead of imagining new things, you lose the joy of building. The process becomes mechanical, detached from the reason you began in the first place. But every era of struggle plants a seed of change. Somewhere among the frustration, a few developers started asking, does it really need to be this way? What if the web could go back to being light? What if we didn't rebuild everything for every visitor? What if we could pre-build and deliver instantly? These weren't new questions. But this time, the timing was right. Cloud computing was rising, content delivery networks, CDNs, were spreading, JavaScript was evolving, becoming not just a scripting language but a universal language for the web. APIs were replacing monolithic backends, offering clean access to data without all the baggage. And so, quietly, a new idea began to take form. It didn't come from a big announcement or a billion-dollar company. It came from the collective imagination of developers who were simply tired of the old way. They wanted speed, they wanted security, they wanted to focus on building again, not on maintaining servers or debugging infrastructure. They wanted the soul of the web back. The first prototypes were small, experimental, even fragile, but they hinted at something extraordinary. Sites that loaded instantly, that could scale effortlessly, that didn't need complex server setups. It was as if the old city of the web had been rebuilt, lighter, cleaner, decentralized. Each page stood on its own but connected through invisible threads of PAS and JavaScript. Developers began to rediscover joy. Deployments that once took hours now took seconds. A Git push could send a site live to millions of people around the world. The old frustration turned into wonder again. But more than just technology, this new approach represented a change in philosophy, a shift from control to freedom, from complexity to clarity. It wasn't about throwing away everything from the past. It was about simplifying what mattered most. For years, the web had been trapped under its own architecture, powerful but ponderous, flexible but fragile. Now, a new movement was beginning to rise, one that said, we can build faster, we can build smarter, and we can build beautifully. That idea became a spark, that spark became a movement, and that movement would soon have a name, Jamstack. It was more than an acronym, it was a belief that the web should serve the creator, not the other way around. The story of Jamstack isn't about replacing the old web, it is about redeeming it, bringing back its simplicity, speed, and spirit of exploration. And so, as the old city of code continued to groan under its own weight, a new city began to rise beside it, lighter, faster, freer, a web built not from burden, but from possibility. Every revolution begins not with noise, but with clarity. It happens when someone looks at a mess and says, there is a simpler way. The story of Jamstack is exactly that, a quiet rebellion against unnecessary complexity. It wasn't built from frustration alone, it was built from vision. The web had become a machine that could do anything, but at a cost. Every new function demanded more code, more layers, more dependencies. Developers were racing against their own tools, constantly patching, optimizing, and scaling. Creativity had turned into crisis management. But then came a new idea, one that sounded almost too simple to be true. What if we build websites differently, not dynamically, but statically? What if we didn't wait until someone visited a page to build it? What if we pre-built everything ahead of time and served it instantly from everywhere? It sounded radical, but also strangely familiar. Because this wasn't about abandoning modern tools, it was about rediscovering the heart of the web: speed, simplicity, and reliability. That is when the term Jamstack began to take shape. Jam, short for JavaScript, a PAS, and markup, three elements, three ideas. Together, they formed a new rhythm for the web. The principle was elegant markup: build your pages ahead of time. Pre-generate the content so it is ready to go the moment someone asks for it. A PAS, let external services handle complex functions, authentication, payments, data, without tying your site down to one server. JavaScript, add interactivity and dynamic features in the browser, where they belong. That is Jamstack, a web built from independence, not dependence. It is like separating the instruments in an orchestra so each can play with precision, yet still produce harmony. Instead of one monolithic structure trying to do everything at once, Jamstack encouraged a modular approach. You could choose the best tool for each job. You could swap pieces in and out without breaking the whole. You could focus on creation, not configuration. And something magical happened. Developers began to enjoy their work again. There was less waiting, less worrying, and more building. With Jamstack, you could deploy your site to a content delivery network, CDN, a vast web of servers around the globe, and know that users would get the fastest experience possible, no matter where they were. The server no longer built your site on the fly, it simply delivered pre-built content, like a beautifully wrapped gift that is already waiting at the door. The impact was immediate. Pages loaded in milliseconds, traffic spikes didn't crash servers, security risks dropped dramatically because there were fewer moving parts to attack. It was a paradigm shift that reconnected people with what they started building in the first place. And yet, Jamstack wasn't just about performance, it was about philosophy. It said, you don't have to build everything together to make something great. You can separate concerns, you can simplify, you can trust the edge, the APIs, the pre-builds, and still deliver experiences that feel modern and dynamic. This idea resonated with a generation of creators who were tired of framework fatigue. They spent years switching from one architecture to another, chasing promises of simplicity that never lasted. But Jamstack wasn't a framework, it was a way of thinking. You could use React, Vue, Svelte, or none of them at all. You could use headless CMS platforms like Contentful, Sanity, or Netlify CMS to feed content through APIs. You could pair it with static site generators like Gatsby, Next.js, Hugo, or Eleventy. It didn't matter how you built as long as you built smart. Jamstack didn't demand allegiance, it invited creativity. Suddenly, developers and designers found themselves working together again, not fighting over deployment issues or server settings. A designer could update content through a headless CMS, and within seconds, a developer could deploy a new build across the globe. It was effortless collaboration, and because it was static first, scaling became a non-issue. Whether your site had 10 visitors or 10 million, it could handle the load. The CDN did the heavy lifting, not your infrastructure. In a world obsessed with speed, Jamstack gave us something even more valuable: freedom. Freedom to experiment, freedom to choose, freedom to create without fear of breaking everything. As this philosophy spread, new platforms rose to support it, like Netlify, Vercel, and Cloudflare Pages. They didn't just host websites, they empowered them. They turned deployment into a single command, a moment of magic where imagination became reality. And behind every successful Jamstack project was a rediscovered sense of purpose. Developers weren't just building maps, they were building experiences that were fast, secure, and sustainable. Jamstack was the web, simplified, not dumbed down, but elevated. It was the realization that sometimes less truly is more, and that by decoupling what used to be tangled together, you can achieve something that feels almost effortless. That is the paradox of Jamstack. It is simple on the surface but powerful underneath, like poetry in code. It has its strengths behind elegance. By the time the movement had a name, it had already become a philosophy, a belief that the web doesn't need to be heavy to be capable, that speed and creativity don't need to be enemies, that performance can be beautiful. And as more developers embraced this mindset, the web began to change again, this time not through revolution, but through refinement. The old ways weren't destroyed, they were transformed. The chaos of the past had been distilled into clarity. Jamstack wasn't just born, it arrived quietly, like sunrise breaking over a weary city of code. And as its light spread, it revealed something extraordinary. The web could finally breathe again. Speed is not just a number, it has an emotion. It has the feeling of clicking something and being met with instant response, like a conversation that doesn't lag, a thought that doesn't stumble. In the world of Jamstack, speed is poetry. It adds rhythm, it adds respect, it adds care for the user as time. When a page loads instantly, it feels almost magical. The barrier between wanting and receiving disappears. The experience becomes invisible, and that is the most powerful kind of design, the one you don't even notice. Jamstack didn't just make websites faster. It restored something we didn't know we had lost: flow. Before Jamstack, every page visit was like a negotiation between browser and server. The server had to think, assemble, fetch, and render a small delay that, over time, became the norm. But Jamstack changed the equation. Now, the thinking happens before the visitor arrives. The site is already built, already waiting, already live. It acts like your favorite, preparing your order before you walk in, not because they guessed, but because they understood. That is the essence of Jamstack: performance, anticipation. Static files live on a content delivery network, an invisible web of servers spread across the planet. When someone in Tokyo or Paris or Nairobi opens your site, it doesn't travel halfway across the world. It comes from the nearest node, a neighbor, not a stranger. The result: lightning-fast experiences that feel intimate, effortless, and canned. And kindness is the right word, because performance is empathy. A slow website says, "Wait for me." A fast one says, "I am ready for you." Jamstack's approach to performance isn't about beating benchmarks or scoring eBay on a test. It is about honoring attention, that fragile currency of the digital age. Every second matters. Every delay tells a story about priorities. When your site loads instantly, you're retelling your users, you matter, your time matters. It is easy to forget how deeply performance affects perception. We trust fast websites. We believe they're more reliable, more professional, more credible. But this trust isn't just technical, it is psychological. A fast experience feels alive. It feels human. That is where Jamstack transforms from an architecture into an art form. Because when performance becomes part of design, you're not just building code, you're rebuilding emotion. Imagine scrolling through a site that feels like a living organism, pages that open like breaths, transitions that flow like music. Behind that beauty isn't magic, it is the simplicity of pre-built content, delivered through edge networks with millisecond precision. Jamstack doesn't just enable speed, it enables grace, and grace is what separates technology from artistry. Think of it this way: old architectures were like heavy machinery, powerful, but clunky, noisy, and dependent. Jamstack is more like a well-tuned instrument, precise, responsive, and expressive. You play it, and it sings back. But the performance in Jamstack's world goes beyond loading times. It extends into scalability, reliability, and security, the hidden dimensions of experience. When your site doesn't rely on servers to render content on demand, there is less that can go wrong. There is no database to overload, no runtime to crash. It is just static assets are predictable, safe, immutable, and yet, thanks to a PAS, those assets can still dance with live data, comments, search results, weather updates, payments, anything you can imagine. It has dynamic experience without dynamic pain. It has controlled freedom, the kind artists crave, the kind engineers admire. That is why Jamstack's magic isn't about replacing the backend. It is about liberating it. You can still connect to databases, CMS systems, or services, but you do it on your own terms, through a PAS. That decoupling means independence, and independence means speed. This decoupling also means you can evolve each layer separately. You can redesign your front-end without touching your backend. You can change a CMS without rewriting your code. You can scale to millions of users without touching a server. It has a modular ecosystem where every part knows its role and performs it flawlessly. There is a kind of elegance in that, a reminder that technology, at its best, is not about doing more, but doing less beautifully. Jamstack teaches us that minimalism is not the opposite of power. It is the source of it. The power of performance is not in what you add, but in what you remove. Every eliminated request, every simplified process, every pre-built page, it all adds up to something profound, a sense of calm. Because when a site just works, instantly, consistently, we stop thinking about it. We focus on the content, the message, the story. The technology fades into transparency, and that is the ultimate goal of any great design, to disappear gracefully. Performance, then, becomes invisible art. It is the silence between notes that makes the melody meaningful. When Jamstack sites load instantly, it is not just the speed you feel, it is the freedom, the sense that you can move through the web without friction, without waiting, without worry. In a digital world full of noise, Jamstack reminds us that the best experiences are often the quietest, the ones that simply work, because when performance becomes poetry, we stop noticing the web and start feeling it again. Every movement begins with a handful of dreamers, people who see possibility where others see limitations. Jamstack's rise was no different. It wasn't powered by corporations or marketing campaigns. It was powered by builders or by developers, designers, and creators who wanted the web to feel joyful again. In the old web, building something felt like carrying a boulder uphill. You wrote your code, deployed it to servers, configured databases, managed dependencies, and prayed everything stayed online. Every new feature risked breaking something, every launch was an act of courage. But when Jamstack appeared, it whispered something radical. What if it could be easy again? And people listened. For developers, it was a liberation. The long nights spent wrestling with backend errors were replaced with the simple thrill of pushing code and seeing it live within seconds. The gap between idea and execution began to shrink. With Jamstack, building wasn't a struggle anymore, it was play. Tools like Netlify, Vercel, and Cloudflare pages turned what used to be a multi-step deployment into a single command. Type git push, and your creation would ripple across the world instantly, flawlessly, and securely. For the first time in years, developers felt the rush of autonomy. They didn't need to wait for infrastructure teams or configuration approvals. They could experiment, iterate, and publish on their own schedule. That freedom reignited creativity. It's easy to forget how much innovation depends on joy. When you enjoy your tools, you create fearlessly, you take risks, you explore new ideas because the barrier to testing them is gone. And so, a new culture began to form, one that blended technology with artistry. Designers loved Jamstack because it meant consistency. Pages looked and performed the same everywhere. Developers loved it because it was predictable. Businesses loved it because it was fast, secure, and cost-effective. It was the rare movement that united everyone. Communities began to blossom around this idea. Meetups, conferences, online forums where people shared not just code, but philosophy. They talked about workflow happiness, developer experience, the joy of simplicity. Jamstack wasn't just an architecture. It was an attitude, a belief that better tools make better creators. and the builders of this new web started to see themselves differently. They weren't just engineers or designers, they were storytellers, artists, architects of experience. They started to ask deeper questions. What makes a website feel alive? What makes digital interaction human? Jamstack gave them the space to explore those questions because it handled the complexity quietly. In the background, think about it. When infrastructure fades away, creativity steps forward. Suddenly, small teams could build products that rivaled the giants. A solo developer could launch a startup from their bedroom and scale it globally without touching a server. A nonprofit could publish rich, interactive content without worrying about cost or maintenance. The web, once dominated by scale and capital, was rediscovering its original promise, accessibility. And that accessibility wasn't just technical, it was emotional. The process of creation itself became more approachable. Deployments were no longer intimidating, version control wasn't scary, collaboration was seamless. Developers began teaching each other not just how to use Jamstack, but why it mattered. They spoke of empowerment, of control, of the beauty of simplicity. They share stories of launching projects in hours instead of weeks. They spoke about sleeping peacefully during high-traffic events because their sites simply wouldn't crash. The world of web development had been filled with noise, frameworks, updates, dependencies, tools promising to solve every problem but often creating new ones. Jamstack offered something rare in tech peace. That peace allowed people to focus on what mattered most: the content, the experience, the story. And as that shift happened, something else emerged: community-driven innovation. Because Jamstack wasn't owned by any single company or framework, it grew organically. Every developer who adopted it brought something new: a tool, a plugin, a workflow. The ecosystem became a reflection of the people within it: diverse, open, collaborative. You could feel it in the way people spoke about their work. They weren't describing projects, they were describing possibilities. I built this in a weekend. I deployed this to millions of users instantly. I no longer fear releases. That kind of confidence spreads, it inspires others to build. And slowly, the culture of the web began to shift from move fast and break things to something gentler, wiser, move simply, and build beautifully. This was the quiet revolution of Jamstack. Not just faster websites, but happier creators. Not just new workflows, but new mindsets. Developers once burnt out from endless complexity began mentoring others again. Designers once frustrated by inconsistent performance began pushing creative boundaries. Businesses once burdened by technical debt began dreaming bigger. In every corner of the digital world, you could feel it, a renaissance of building. It wasn't about chasing trends, it was about rediscovering the joy of making things that work. And when something works beautifully, it inspires trust, it earns loyalty, it reminds us why we build in the first place: to connect, to share, to create meaning through interaction. That is what the builders of the new web understood. Jamstack wasn't just technology, it was an invitation to rediscover the human side of digital creation. And as they built, taught, and shared, the web itself began to heal. The age of complexity had been necessary. It taught us what was possible, but the age of simplicity had finally returned, and it felt like coming home. The future doesn't always arrive with noise. Sometimes it arrives in silence, in the elegant hum of something that simply works. Jamstack was never about revolution through destruction. It was about evolution through clarity. It didn't tear down the old web. It refined it, distilled it into something leaner, faster, more human. And that is what makes its story so timeless, because Jamstack isn't just a way to build websites, it is a way to think. In an age where everything feels overloaded, our inboxes, our mails, our feeds, our Jamstack's philosophy feels like a breath of fresh air. It whispers a truth that reaches beyond code. Simplicity is not the absence of power, it has the mastery of it. We spent decades adding layers to our digital world, frameworks on top of libraries on top of dependencies. We created marvels of complexity. But sometimes, we lost sight of why we were building in the first place. Jamstack reminds us that technology should serve creativity, not suffocate it. By separating what can be static from what must be dynamic, it gives creators control, not over everything, but over what truly matters. It is not about doing less, it is about doing better. Imagine a future where content is not bound by servers or geography, where creativity travels at the speed of thought, where deployment isn't a test but a moment of expression. That is the world Jamstack points toward, one where creators spend their time imagining, not maintaining, and this future isn't hypothetical, it is already here. We're seeing it in the rise of headless CMS platforms, where content lives free of presentation, in serverless functions, where logic runs only when it is needed, in edge computing, where decisions happen close to the user and reducing distance, delay, and waste. All of these ideas orbit around the same principle: decentralization through simplicity. In the Jamstack universe, your site isn't confined to a single machine or a single region. It is everywhere at once, distributed, efficient, alive, like sunlight. It doesn't travel from one place, it really is from many. And that shift changes everything. Businesses can scale without fear, creators can publish without cost, developers can focus on experiences, not infrastructure. The planet, too, benefits because when we serve fewer, smaller files from nearby nodes, we reduce energy consumption and carbon footprint. Simplicity, it turns out, is not only elegant, it is sustainable. But perhaps the most beautiful thing about Jamstack's philosophy is how it extends beyond technology. It is a mindset that applies to how we live, work, and create. We often think progress means more tools, more features, more noise, but Jamstack teaches the opposite. That progress can mean less but better, less friction, less maintenance, less waiting, more focus, more creativity, more joy. And isn't it that whatever a creator, every builder, every thinker wants? To spend more time shaping ideas and less time fighting against the systems that deliver them. In this way, Jamstack feels like a metaphor for modern life itself. The more we simplify, the more we see what is truly essential. In the coming years, this mindset will evolve even further. The line between static and dynamic will blur as edge computing, AI, and automation merge with Jamstack as core principles. Imagine pages that pre-build themselves intelligently, content that adapts in real time based on user context, and PIS that personalize experiences without complexity. The future web will be alive, not in the chaotic, server-heavy way of the past, but in an elegant, responsive dance between static and dynamic. And at the center of it all will remain that simple truth: separation brings strength. We'll continue to see creators building entire businesses with a few lines of code and a single command. We'll see teams launch global campaigns without touching a server. We'll see students, hobbyists, and others empowered to create professional-grade experiences without the traditional gatekeepers of infrastructure. Because Jamstack democratized building, it turned the web back into what it was meant to be, an open canvas. And that is the legacy that matters most, not just faster load times or cleaner architectures, but a restoration of the creative spirit. Because when technology becomes simple, creativity becomes limitless, and that is why the story of Jamstack is really the story of the human web, one that listens, responds, and evolves with us. We used to measure progress in milliseconds, but now we measure it in meaning, in how seamlessly an experience connects us, inspires us, and makes us feel something. That is what this philosophy unlocks, not just performance, but presence. The web, in its purest form, is communication. It has the space between you and the world, between imagination and reality. And Jamstack, quietly, is helping make that space frictionless again. So maybe the future won't be defined by who can build the most complex system, but by who can build the simplest one that works beautifully. Because simplicity is not weakness, it is wisdom earned through complexity. The web doesn't need to shout to impress, it just needs to flow. And when it does, when it moves with speed, stability, and elegance, it feels almost poetic. So, as we look forward to the next decade of innovation, remember this: the future of the web won't be built in noise, it will be built in clarity. A future where creators focus on stories, not servers, where performance feels human, where technology finally disappears into experience. That is not just Jamstack's promise, it is its poetry, because the web isn't just a network of pages, it is a reflection of imagination, and in the language of simplicity, Jamstack speaks fluently.